To enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Let's start off with the House Oversight and Reform Committee. They have launched an investigation into the ongoing baby formula scandal. There are four companies control 90% of the baby formula market in this country. Four companies. That's it. Four. Abbott, Beckett, Bensecker, Nestle. I thought they did hot chocolate and water, and Perrigo. Those are the heavy four. One of them have a bacteria problem, so shut down. Trying to get some of the regulations. Again, those regulations. Hey, what's a couple of dead kids? Got to get past those regulations. Now, the chairwoman, Carolyn Middleoni, who we've had on the program a couple of times over the years, and Illinois Representative Raj Krishnamurthy, they are the ones leading this. They wrote a letter to the Big Four, said that the national formula shortage poses a threat to the health and economic security of infants and families and communities throughout the country, particularly those with less income who have historically experienced health inequities, including food insecurity. Now, personally, this is one of those moments where you go, business model of on-demand supply, just-in-time inventory. Hey, we just keep right where we're going. Now they're asking, what steps can we make? What steps can we make? And this is where you go. This is the kind of offer where you go, how much money can we give you to lower the price and prevent gouging and help consumers? Instead of, going in with what I would think would be an iron fist, going, don't screw with us. Start pumping up the production there, guys, or we're going to really take a look into your operation and really comb through. Maybe start locking some folks up, because I think this is where we have to start looking. At some point, you've got to go after these big companies and hold them accountable. Where's the Harry Truman of this generation? The worst boss on Capitol Hill was announced today. Congressional staffers look at the representatives and they choose the worst boss, a representative who honestly I've never heard of. Her name, Victoria Spartz, a Republican from Indiana. Had not heard of her. Had to look her up. Named worst boss on Capitol Hill. And her statement, I get it. Worst boss. Yeah. She said a lot of these young people need to toughen up. Exactly the kind of boss you want to work for. You people, you and your poverty wages, you showing up to events so you can get the crackers and cheese. It's crazy. And, today I tweeted out a story about Elon Musk, because everybody seems to be on the right, just all tingling in the panties over Elon and how wonderful. Oh, he's going to buy Twitter and he's going to let us say mean things to people we hate. Isn't he wonderful? There's the woman on the airplane who was, basically doing the whole, Chevy Chase praise Marty Moose thing. Praise Elon. And you go, what are you talking about? They're throwing you off the plane for being an idiot. But evidently, the SpaceX and Tesla CEO, Elon, did an interview with the Financial Times folks where he praised Chinese workers. And this is one of those things where you go, it's not like these Chinese workers have much of a choice in what you're praising them for. He went on this spiel about how there are a lot of super talented, hard-working people in China who strongly believe in manufacturing, and how they don't just burn the midnight oil, they'll burn the 3 a.m. oil, and they won't leave the factory. This is a direct quote. They won't even leave the factory type of thing, whereas in America, people are trying to avoid going to work at all. And, this is one of those frames where you go, they don't have a choice. In fact, if you listen to the Chinese workers and some of the organizing that went on, has been going on for a while, they've been fighting back against the 996 culture. And you go, what's 996? Is that like Herman Cain's 999 plan? No, it's not like that at all. This is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. work days, 6 days a week. That's 996. 9 a.m., 9 p.m., 6 days a week. You go, but that's a lot of hours. Yeah, that's a lot of hours. That's 72 of them a week. That's to make just a bare existence. And yeah, Americans aren't going to do that for poverty wages in desperate conditions. No, we're not. And we shouldn't have to. But understand, our benevolent dictator, and understand, benevolent dictators are still dictators. But the Elons of the world, that's what they want for working people. And I keep saying, this is where we're heading back to, because in this country, that's how it was. And if you listen to the Elon Musks and the CEO class of this world, that's what they pine for. They pine for a desperate workforce, pliable and compliant, desperate, poverty-ridden, people who have to show up, and work sun up to sundown like it used to be in this country 6 days a week, just to make a meager existence. And this is where we have to, as working people, have these conversations on what kind of an economy do we want to have. And we're in a moment. We are in a moment where we're right back in the heart of the Gilded Age. In 100 years, when they look back at this, as we look back to the Gilded Age of 100 years ago, they're going to go, how did we make the same mistakes that we knew about? How did we allow it to happen again? And why didn't we do enough to stop this kind of mass inequality where you've literally got somebody who's worth, a couple $100 billion? Mind you, a couple $100 billion that a good portion of it came from taxpayer money. This idea that Musk, self-made man. No, started off, parents owned a diamond mine. A diamond mine, man. This is not a guy who started off on a street corner with a tin cup selling pencils. This is not somebody who whittled his bootstraps out of intestinal fortitude. This is a guy who started off on third base, says he hits a triple. Telling working people that, those Chinese workers, they know how to work. Oh, boy. They don't burn the midnight oil. They burn the 3 a.m. oil. It's because they don't have a choice. When Foxconn was having people jumping to their death in the stairwells to get out of going to work so that they could get out of it, we can't take it anymore. What did Foxconn do there? Did they make conditions better? No, they just put nets in the stairwells. Catch those people, get them back to work. And you got to ask yourself, is this the kind of economy we want? And the answer is no. We have workers who are organizing every day. You look at Starbucks. Again, today, 3 more landslide victories at Starbucks in California. And look, These are workers who, hardworking folks, low wage jobs, saying we've had enough. We've had enough of a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation profiting off of our backs. We want some of it. We want dignity. We want respect. And it's not just the low wage workers. You've got Intel engineers who are mounting union drive campaigns. There was this one guy, he's running for Congress, mounting a union drive at the Oregon chip factory. This idea that it's just all about, poverty, about low wage workers. It's not. It's about all up and down the scale, as it should be. Now, a listener sent me an email with the talking points that Apple put out to their store people, to their managers. And I would have to imagine the managers got the message, because this is what Amazon did to their store, their management people. If people organize, you're going to get fired. So these talking points come with, these are our talking points, and you better use them, or you're probably going to find yourself on the curb. But they're the kind of talking points where you just go, the world that they're trying to create doesn't have to be this adversarial kind of situation. Like one of the talking points, Apple's a place where our connections with and our care for our teams creates a special culture. Everyone has an important role. Yeah, that didn't seem to matter yesterday. That didn't seem to matter before the union organizing campaign came along. Our team comes from a wide array of backgrounds, they write, and have different aspirations and needs. Direct relationships we have with our team allows us to understand and celebrate our individual differences. Pushing that individualism that has been screwing us for so long. We often say people come here to do their life's best work. We want to give everyone the space to do that, but that requires getting to know you personally. It requires us as leaders to understand your goals and where we can provide you with the best opportunities to grow. It also takes, which is why we put such emphasis on building individual relationships. You get the sense here that they really don't want people standing with each other. They've used individual and direct relationships with the person. They've used this a lot. I've only read a paragraph. Because like any flock, it's easier to take out, when you can get the sheep separated, it's easier to get one of them. And then the next one, and then the next one. They go on, Apple is a place where our connections with and our care for our teams creates a special culture. Everyone has an important role to play. If a union were to come into the store, well, we would be placing many of our interactions in the hands of a third party. We could lose some of our ability to engage directly with, blank on many issues. You go, why? Why would you do any differently? Why would you talk to people differently? Oh, that's because you want it differently. I got it. Okay. They go on to say how things could change. You may be hearing about union activities at a few of our stores. I want to touch base if you have questions and let you know if you have thoughts. Every one of us has different reasons for coming to Apple, and we look to hire people who want to do their life's best work. People we hire are talented, interesting, and bring perspectives and aspirations to the job. These are their talking points. This is rambling. So if there was ever a union campaign here, I want you to know that we could, write to support a union or not support a union. It would be your choice, but we want you to make an educated decision. They go on to talk about, we want to make the store great. What makes a store great is having a team that works together. Like so much about relationships, if we're going to work well together, we've got to help each other. Know if someone's under stress, know if someone has needs in some space, and the ability to talk through and work out problems. That's what unions do. They work through problems. They talk through problems and they solve them. And you know what else they do? They get them in writing and they solve the problems in writing so that they have contracts so that you don't have to keep doing it all the time. Pretty simple. Now they say that can't always happen when a union represents a store's team members. And a union would speak for you on most issues related to work. Maybe you'd agree with the union's approach, or maybe you wouldn't. There's no way to predict. Now understand, unions are democracy in the workplace. When you and your coworkers come together and you decide on a path forward, that's the path you move forward on. Now they go into a whole bunch of other your basic attack points, and it's focused on the hyper individual. You might lose something, you might not get what you want, and the reality is they're hoping to divide and conquer. They're hoping they're hoping to create an environment of adversity. Because the reality is, in unionized workplaces, problems get solved because people sit down and actually negotiate on somewhat equal footing. And this is the important part of this. And that's what they don't want. They don't want that equal footing. They want the we've got an open door policy. You can come in and we can dismiss you. You can't dismiss a group of union workers. When empowered workers walk into the boss's office and demand change, and one of the things they talk about is the point system they used to have. We used to have a really rigid system, and then, a whole bunch of people came to us and said, we want change, and we changed things. Yeah, that's what a union does. See, it works. You just showed us that it works when people come together and negotiate collectively. Congratulations. Church of Collective Bargaining. Just worked. And this is one of their talking points. I don't know what Walmart union busting firm they got. I don't know what low rent union busters that wrote these, but not great. Apple Store, do better. That's all I can come up with. Or don't, and hopefully the workers there will organize. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. But it's really kind of comical in a way, in that you've got all of this money that's going into attacking workers and their want of a voice. And I go back to something my grandfather always said, and it always sticks with me in these moments. If a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend two to get it. Because what they understand is return on investment. If Apple or Amazon or Starbucks or XYZ Corporation is spending money on union busters to tell you you don't need that union, you can negotiate for yourself, you can do it. Maybe I'm double thinking. Maybe I'm going, I better have this. And me personally, I'm spending the $2 to get it. Back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So there's an article in Politico today that grabbed my attention as Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Raphael Warnock are pushing the president to do something on student debt. And This is one of those things where there's a heavy push on Biden to do something. And I keep coming back to, I still think the absolute right answer is to buy up all the student loan debt, have people pay it back at the amount that they borrowed at 0.5% interest, and be done with it. So the talking points can go like this. They borrowed money, they paid it back. That simple. No one got anything more than anyone else got. So past generations who are whining and complaining, I didn't get, my student loans forgiven, have nothing to complain about. People who didn't go to college because, hey, the amount of money was too much. There's nothing there for them to complain about. They still had to pay it back. But it's done a little bit fairer. And on a certain level, there has to be some fairness put back into this system. And then going forward, and this is where legislation matters, we've got to fix our higher education system. We've got to begin to claw back a system that works for all working people. You look at the skyrocketing costs of tuition. And there are a bunch of reasons for that. Massive tax cuts for corporate America, massive sums of money being stripped from higher ed. When 2011, when Tom Corbett was governor in my state of Pennsylvania, he proposed a 50% cut to higher education, and I think he ended up with somewhere around 25 or 30% ultimately. They gutted $1 billion from education as a whole that year. And this is one of those moments where we've got to go back and undo the damage of the tax cut fetish. Because the tax cuts never got down to working people. The tax cuts never made its way to the people who show up and punch the clock every day. It went to these big corporations who are doing what? Oh yeah, they're buying back their stock. I mean, this is a major anger moment for me, because if you remember, we were told if we just give the smart people all the money, they'll know what to do with it. They'll use it in the most productive way possible. They're going to invest in new business. They're going to invest in new technology. They're going to invest in better tools for workers. Your productivity is going to go up. The country GDP will expand. It's going to be great. All of the economic voodoo that they shove down our throats. And these stock buybacks are telling us one thing. All of that was bull. Or, to use a Biden term, all of it was malarkey. What all it really was a giant ripoff. It was a con. And sadly, we working people continue to buy that. And the weird thing is, and this is where I reach out to my conservative Republican friends, my Trump voter friends. Even they get it. When you strip aside which team you're on, when you take off your red cap or your blue cap or whatever T-shirt you're wearing that day, whatever team you're on, whatever flag you've staked in the ground, when you actually just talk about the policy stuff, even they agree. They get it. We've given way too much power to corporate America. We've given too much wealth to the wealth class. We've created a billionaire class out of whole cloth because we completely gutted our tax code. And that's how we used to pay for education. That's how we used to pay for infrastructure. That's how we used to pay for a future. It's how we invested in the future of this country, and we gave it away. Much like our manufacturing, much like our productive capacity that we could have used to get us out of this moment where our supply chains are jammed up. This wouldn't have happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago, because we weren't depending on China or someone else. We were depending on ourselves. That was policy. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day workers at Tolteca Foods in Richmond, California, went out on strike. Many were undocumented Mexican women who helped organize the plant in 1969. In his book, The Revolutionary Imaginations of Greater Mexico, historian Alan Aledo Gomez states that the women had grown increasingly frustrated with the lack of union response regarding speed-ups, immigration raids, discretionary firings, substandard wages and unsafe working conditions, and began to look elsewhere for support. They reached out to the organization CASA, which provided legal and social services for undocumented immigrants. The women decided to strike without authorization from the Contra Costa Labor Council. They packed the council's emergency meeting, where they put their scarred bodies on display to attest to the dangerous and abusive working conditions and poor wages. Just as the council sanctioned the strike, workers learned the company started removing machinery from the factory. They packed the picket lines to stop the trucks from taking out the equipment. The first driver stopped. The second plowed through several women. The strike committee won an injunction to prevent the removal of equipment, and after 3 weeks, workers won their demands. Gomez argues the strike was important for several reasons. It demonstrated that a large female and undocumented workforce could organize and win a strike against a transnational company at a moment when unions were increasingly under attack. They built a rank-and-file independence that built support for their demands from their union leaders and the broader community. The women workers at Tolteca fought for bread and butter issues. They also worked to reshape their union to take on broader issues of social justice that included immigration rights and women's rights. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Nearly every nation with an advanced economy, and some not so advanced, treats child care as a fundamental public good, essential to nurturing children, families, and the whole society. But not our U.S. of A. Indeed, our so-called leaders relegate millions of working parents and 21 million kids under 5 to the tender mercies of a for-profit market, with child care facilities ranging from impossibly expensive to helter-skelter unlicensed kiddie corrals. Embarrassingly, while right-wingers mindlessly salute the U.S. as exceptional, they fail to note that what's exceptional about our child care system is that it's such a shambles it can't even be called a system, much less caring. For the past decade, independent journalist and economic analyst Bryce Covert has documented the worsening social crisis caused by this abject failure of leadership. 2/3 of our pre-K kids have both parents in the workforce, meaning care outside the home is essential. 85% of the parents say that finding quality, affordable child care in their area is a problem somewhere between serious and impossible. Nationwide, the annual cost for a 4-year-old's daycare averages about $13,000. Despite millions of working families finding this essential service unaffordable or even unavailable, political leaders have ignored their plight. Child care aid reaches only 15% of qualified kids. Some callous governors even divert chunks of federal child care subsidies to their own political priorities, such as corporate welfare. In 2017, even before COVID-19 abruptly shut down thousands of care centers, 40% of America's children lived in child care deserts, zip codes with 0 programs or so few that 2/3 or more of the area's children are unable to get in. This is Jim Hightower saying, is this the best we can do for the future of our nation?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I gotta tell you, I love this story about Marjorie Trader Green. Evidently calling up some woman in her 70s, a lifelong Republican in her 70s, and, admonishing her for spreading vicious lies. Went on this whole rant about, it's been brought to my attention that you're spreading some lies about me that are being spread by one of the leaders of Antifa, someone that you wouldn't want to be involved with. Basically telling this woman in her 70s, you better check yourself. You go, wait a second, what are you going to do, Marjorie? You going to go over there and smack her around a bit? And then I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, these people are that kind of, that level of crazy. And they're going to possibly take control in November. Let the fun begin. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on just how crazy things could get and where the top stories of the week have taken us. I've asked our good friend Max Burns to come talk with us. Max is a Democratic strategist, columnist over at the Daily Beast, and the newest on-camera correspondent with the Young Turks Network. Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with that. Congrats on the Young Turks gig. Good job for you.
Thank you very much. I always will take any opportunity to tell more stories about how Republicans are undermining democracy. It seems important, you know.
It does. Now I'm looking at Trainwreck Green here, and you better check yourself, old woman. Why am I not surprised by this?
Well, this is just where the Republican Party is. I mean, there's a saying in politics that if only every voter could meet my candidate, he'd win in a landslide. The opposite is true for Marjorie Taylor Greene. The more voters meet her, the more they go home thinking, I'm never going to vote for this person. How do I defeat this person? And it's such a double standard to me, I think, that Madison Cawthorn is really getting hammered now and called an embarrassment by the party. But everything Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing gets the thumbs up from Kevin McCarthy. It's all great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. And you look, she's not even the worst one. I mean, Boebert what was she going on about someone sending baby formula to China? I mean, just pulling stuff out of some orifice. Kind of crazy.
I think she was accusing Congressman Eric Swalwell of sending our formula to Chinese babies. You know, your classic Lauren Boebert citizen leadership.
I mean, it's just plain kind of crazy, the stuff that goes on with these folks. And then it takes us over to Madison Cawthorn, where, wow, you want to talk about cratering. You want to talk about somebody who's literally, tanking. Wow.
Yeah, I wish Democrats were this effective at attacking Republicans, as Republicans are at attacking their own. There's an article out now in Politico about Madison Cawthorn, essentially detailing his collapse. And if the kid wasn't a Nazi, I would feel bad. It appears that he does have some real problems going on. There are several Republicans who spoke on the record in that piece that Madison Cawthorn needs help, maybe needs an intervention. And it left me feeling like I understood Madison Cawthorn better, and also understood more than ever why he should be nowhere near a seat in Congress.
No, I said the same thing. I mean, there's somebody, look, I don't know what his orientation is, but clearly he's struggling with some identity issues, doing the cross-dressing thing, rubbing, whatever, shoving whatever in someone's face. There's a lot of questionable behavior going on there.
Yeah, I mean, bring a gun on a plane once, shame on you. Bring a gun on a plane twice, shame on me. It really is the detail, the number of things that have happened to him just in the past few months. Another driving infraction that he's in court for, a marriage that dissolved. He's increasingly sort of erratic and lashing out even within his own party. It does make you think that the party is almost in a way doing him a favor by trying to push him out next week. And the scary thing is he might still win.
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me. I'm looking at the polls. He's still ahead. So what do they do once he wins? I mean, I've seen some stories they're going to try and ostracize him a bit. But how do you do that even more now that he's let it out of the bag? Because this all comes out, if you remember, all because he let it out of the bag about the coke and the orgies.
Yeah, and it's the same with Matt Gaetz. I mean, if Republicans take back the House, they're in sort of a moral pickle. Not that they're worried about the morals of it. If you say don't seat Madison Cawthorn because the entire party has condemned him, his entire state delegation has condemned him, how do you justify not seating Cawthorn but seating Marjorie Taylor Greene or seating Jim Jordan? This is a real question. There's so much rot that has gone untouched in the Republican Party that I'm just curious why Madison Cawthorn was the straw that broke the camel's back here.
I'm telling you, it was the coke and the orgies. It's like Fight Club. You can't talk about coke and orgy club. You just can't talk about it. It doesn't exist.
And people should stop. It is a terrible visual. You could vision any of the Republican caucus at a cocaine orgy. You won't sleep.
Yeah, Chuck Grassley. You just can't imagine Chuck Grassley at the coke and orgy party. Can't get that out of you?
I can now. Thank you.
Listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Max Burns. Max is a Democratic strategist, columnist over at the Daily Beast, and the newest on-camera correspondent with the Young Turks. You want to check out his work at the Daily Beast. We'll get links out on social media on the work that he does there. I wanted to get your thoughts on this week. The president laid into Republicans for not being helpful, looking at the Rick Scott plan, kind of putting some blame at their feet, and then using the MAGA and ultra MAGA labels, which you knew immediately that the right was going to take for their own. And I loved the Rick Wilson frame of this is another example of Democrats playing chess and Republicans eating the pieces, which I thought was brilliant because it's true. This is what they do. Thoughts?
I think from a messaging standpoint, this is a mess to me. This idea of ultra MAGA that comes at a time when there's sort of a civil war in the MAGA movement right now. We saw in Ohio, it's happening in Pennsylvania right as we speak. For factions of the Trump movement to lay claim to who is the true sort of ideological heir. And having that ultra MAGA label essentially legitimizes that movement, offers them a way to legitimize themselves. And calling Donald Trump King MAGA, I think we should try to avoid branding our opponents with names they would use on themselves.
Exactly.
That will immediately be used for fundraising. And it just shows you that the communications apparatus in the party is still stuck in D.C., looking at consultant reports. They're not aware of how these things are being used on social media or how political language is evolving. They're just not in that conversation.
Yeah, and yesterday I started the show off with a quote from Paul Begala, who said that I don't know how the Democrats came from the party of the person on the factory floor to the party of the person in the factory lounge, but that's where he says we are, and I'm going, yeah, where you been? That's been that way for quite some time, and I would argue, Paul, you were part of what pushed us in that direction. But now that we identify, it's like any problem. Now that you understand what the problem is, change that. And this is where I wanted the president to lean heavily into. And he has. Look, I give him credit. He's leaned heavily into the union organizing, had Chris Smalls and a lot of the union organizers to the White House, has been very pro-labor. But I think you got to go even further than where we are. And you got to start pushing Democrats up and down the ticket to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've really lost that labor core in the party. There was a point, I think, around the Obama 2008-2012, where the party really started chasing Silicon Valley money. And there was a lot of young liberal tech billionaires who wanted to support the party. And the party moved that direction and stopped talking as closely with labor and stopped collaborating as closely. And right now we're in the middle of a labor renaissance in this country. And it's driven almost entirely by young people. Kind of voters Democrats need. And there's not the level of support I had expected to see. I was glad to see Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren out on picket lines. I was glad to see Joe Biden mention it. But I mean, you're right. It is a back burner conversation right now.
No, but this goes back to Bill Clinton even. I mean, this goes back to, I voted for him for one reason. He was going to pass strike replacement, and that didn't happen. But he was part of what moved us away with the DLC and being more business friendly kind of third way kind of stuff, and that whole DLC thing, the Democratic Leadership Council folks, they moved us into the Wall Street types and away from workers and brought us trade policies and all kinds of things that harmed workers. And look, Al Gore was no great friend of labor either. They were just less bad than the Republicans, and that's been the problem. They've been just less bad instead of the champions that working people need. So clearly, people went where someone was fighting for whatever interest they've got now, and working people then kind of took on some of these cultural issues, going, hey, if I'm going to get screwed at work, let's fight for something else. And that's, I think, how we got where we are today.
It's certainly a reason we saw that labor just sheathed off the party in 2016 in a way that I don't think the pollsters predicted, because quite frankly, the modeling and the consensus polling data points among consultants in the Beltway discounts labor. and to our detriment. And the best thing that we can do is really connect with this movement that's going on right now, especially with Starbucks. I think there are powerful union organizing forces at play in this country right now, and they are there to be allied with. And they will remember if we do not.
What I love about what's going on at Starbucks, and also look at Amazon with Chris Smalls and the Amazon Labor Union, is not so much that they're organizing and they're winning NLRB elections. It's that they're actually building worker power. They're building, really aggressive workers who are demanding. They're not going to take no for an answer. And the Amazon example at JFK 8 is a perfect example of this. These are people who won't be denied. These are worker organizers who are fighting and internalize that worker power. And I keep saying this is what we need to go back to, because once you feel power in the workplace, that kind of sentiment goes into every other aspect of your life, political, social, all of that, and that's where I think we need to get back to.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we have the victories. What's missing are the visuals. This is a movement in dire need of some heroic and powerful visuals. I saw Starbucks had asked the White House to give them a meeting because the White House had met with union organizers. And I think that would be an incredible opportunity for Joe Biden to meet with Starbucks management and unions together in the treaty room and hold a Theodore Roosevelt style negotiation together.
Absolutely. But here's the interesting part of this. And going back to the Clintons, we find out, and I remembered that Howard Schultz, the CEO, the old new CEO of Starbucks, was going to be Hillary Clinton's Secretary of Labor if she were elected in 2016. That shows how far the Democratic Party has moved back to the side of working people. That and this is where I give Biden credit, and I hope he'll do just what you said. Convene a summit, bring Howard Schultz and the Starbucks United folks together, and have a rose garden and tea or whatever you got to do. Have a coffee and hammer it out.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible visual. Would be Joe Biden just saying, "We're going to the treaty room. We're not coming out until we have a deal." And the visual itself would be stunning. It would be an incredible show of progressivism in action, yielding results. I don't know why we've been so cautious about embracing this.
Yeah, I'm with you. Last question I got for you. Jen Psaki's leaving. I guess today, the last day. Evidently, she has held more press conferences than the entire 4 years of the former guy and all of his press secretaries, of which he had 4: Spicer, Huckabee, Sanders, Grisham, and that Kayleigh McEnany. Wasn't Scaramucci? Wasn't he one for about 6? No, wait a minute. He was director of communications. I forgot that.
It was something, all right.
No, he was only there for a cup of tea. I mean, he wasn't there long. Like, what was it, like 10 minutes? He got his 15 minutes before they ushered him out. But I think she'll be missed. I liked her. I liked her a lot.
Yeah, I liked her a lot. I mean, it's no surprise she did more work than all the Trump secretaries put together. That's what happens when you have someone who reads the training manual, who shows up to work and cares about the job. And I'm excited about Karine Jean-Pierre as well. I mean, she's an incredibly talented communicator, a progressive communicator I have great respect for. I've seen her work up close. And I think she will be an excellent advocate for a White House that really needs a communication.
Are you surprised that the right's gone after her for comments trying to pin the racist label on her?
Not at all. Karine Jean-Pierre is a Columbia-educated, gay, Haitian immigrant woman. This is everything that Republicans hate. She defies all of their ignorant stereotypes and excels so plainly that it enrages them. And this is sadly typical. It's disgraceful, but typical.
Look, I know she's qualified. I know she's going to be great at her job, but there's part of me that goes, I got to think someone said this would be the perfect choice just to stick it to them a little bit. I mean, or am I just being a little cynical?
No, I think she was chosen entirely because she's excellent for the role. I think it certainly makes me happy that it makes Republicans upset.
Well, there is that. But just as a reminder, Stephanie Grisham held the title for 8 months of press secretary and did not hold one single on-the-record press briefing.
Will be missed.
There you go. You will. She's missed. All right. But Max, I appreciate the time. Again, congrats on the new gig. I hope you'll come back again and share some time with us since you've now hit the big time. Good on you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, our good friend Max Burns. Make sure you check out his work at the Daily Beast. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Gonna take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss an episode. Subscribe so it's always there, ready for you when you wake up. You take on the go. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1968. That was the day that workers across Paris joined students in a citywide general strike. College students had begun an occupation at the famed Sorbonne University earlier that May. These students were protesting what they saw as governmental repression in post-war France. A story by NPR marking the 40th anniversary of the protests described the situation in France, where women could not wear pants to work and married ones needed a husband's permission to open a bank account. Homosexuality was a crime. Factory workers could be fired at will. The news on the single TV channel required governmental approval. And the overcrowded education system was authoritarian. The students protested French leader Charles de Gaulle and the police. The addition of workers to the protest greatly increased its scope and impact. Paris and much of the country ground to a halt. President de Gaulle was able to weather the protests and keep his political power. By the end of June, most workers had returned to their jobs, but the country would never be the same. The protests of that spring became known as the Social Revolution. It was a turning point in the nation's history, and institutions from workplaces to universities would undergo a liberalization due to the protests. One of the most lasting images from the strike was a series of posters, simple designs emblazoned with the slogans and demands of those involved. One such poster called people to strike, declaring, "Working now is working with a gun to your head." Another read simply, "Factories, Universities, Union." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So I had one of these moments, during the break. My wife's telling me, Sarah from Chicago calls, listen on WCPT AM 820, going, I don't want to talk to somebody famous. I'm going, I'm famous? Oh my goodness, someone thinks I'm famous. Oh, I'm not famous. I'm literally nobody. But hey, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. But Sarah did relay some interesting stuff to my wife, who does my screening. And it's the kind of stories that we do need to tell. They're important stories of, kind of like I tell about my life. When someone gets a union job in my neighborhood where I grew up in the projects, their life got better. And in those places where workers don't have that protection, life doesn't. And the story that, Sarah was telling my wife was, there was a black union and a white union. And back, they were talking years and years ago. But, you saw black workers have better lives because of their unions. And as she pointed out, there was a worker who worked in the coal mines, didn't have protections of a union, ended up with black lung and ended up with nothing. Not surprising to me, but these are the stories that we have to tell. This is the history that we have to pass on from generation to generation to know where we've come from and where the right wing wants to take us back to. Because understand, when they talk about deregulation, they want to strip away protections that would save someone from black lung. when they talk about, freedom of contract, they're talking about taking us back to the Lochner era where unions were bad, and bringing back yellow dog contracts where if you had the audacity to say you joined a union, you got fired immediately. These are stories we have to tell. So, Sarah, I appreciate it. I wish you'd spend some time telling me your story, though. Let's quick go to the phones. Got Alice on line one. Alice, how are you today?
I'm good. I got two quick stories
Hit
for
me.
you. First one, talking to the right-wing Trump supporter today. We got on the religion thing, and she was saying, going on and on about, Jefferson wrote it, and he was a big Christian. Well, I had to bust her bubble and tell her, no, I think you need to research this a bit more. He was an atheist. He even took everything, published his own Bible.
He wrote the Bible.
Yeah. Well, he took everything out of the, King James thing on the New Testament, all the other stuff, and put it together. And it actually, for years, and I think the last one was given out in the early 1900s, they would give them to the new Congress people when they come in. Okay, well, I busted her bubble on that, so, and then I also informed her about Project Veritas was nothing more than the right-wing National Enquirer version. So she wasn't real happy. And then the second thing was, I'm minding my own business, got everything pulled out of the living room, vacuuming behind, phone's ringing off the hook, about killed myself to get to the phone to find out it was one of our right-wing people that are running for political office in Pennsylvania that was having the anti-abortion whatever wing of it calling to save the unborn babies and donate to him. Yeah, well, they weren't real happy by the time I got off the phone with them.
I'm sure you donated something.
I gave them information, if nothing else. They hung up on me.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah. So, yeah. But, hey, when I hit my toe, I'm not being nice to anybody. So you have a good evening.
Thank you, Alice. I appreciate it. I would have loved to have been I would have loved to have heard that conversation. Can we record that? That would have been radio gold. But at the end of it, look, this is why I think what we do here is so important. Having these conversations, talking about how we move in a more positive direction and do things that are going to make lives better. I think that's important. And what we're not getting from our Republican friends, and look, as we're seeing, they don't have a policy agenda. There's nothing there. There's lots of insanity. There's lots of circus acts. There's lots of grievance. There's lots of outrage candy, but there's no policy on what exactly are you going to do to make our lives better. What are you going to do to take on and fix inflation other than platitudes? I have a lot of friends who go, Joe Biden did this. Well, how did he do it? Well, he gave $1,400 to everyone. What? Well, Biden gave $1,400, but Trump gave $1,800. So what's your point? Well, he gave a bunch of money to the states. Yeah, he gave money to the states. Like DeSantis has got money from the federal government that he's using to give tax breaks to the people of Florida, like DeWine's did in Ohio, like Kristi Noem did in South Dakota. What's your point? But they don't get that. They don't get that. While all of these Republican politicians are bashing Biden, they took the money. They took all of it. Didn't vote for it. Attempted to block every bit of it, but boy, did they take it. Boy, did they line their pockets. And this is where, again, understanding exactly what these people are about, why it's so vitally important to ask the question, what are you going to do? And if they don't have an answer, you don't vote for them. If their answer is, well, I'm not them, that ain't a good answer. Just throwing that out. Anyway, if you've missed any of today's program, make sure you grab the podcast, thericksmithshow.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. For stations picking up only the first hour, make sure you get that second hour at the podcast. For everybody else, we're going to take a quick break. Right back after this.
Shows us yet again that the very survival of the reef is at stake.
Australia's Great Barrier Reef hit with another mass bleaching event. Global warming a key factor in the emergence of new diseases.
Oh, great.
Plus,
water officials warn if we get to a Tier 3 shortage, hard decisions will have to be made.
Arizona and California move to enact more severe drought restrictions.
All of those hard decisions and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
There really is no alternative here if we're to see a future for the reef and all the industries, the jobs, and everything that depend on it to be bringing our emissions down much faster than we are at the moment and move beyond fossil fuels and give the reef a fighting chance.
All he is saying is give reefs a chance. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
AP News, I'm Ed Donahue. Police say the gunman involved in a deadly shooting at a Southern California church is a Chinese immigrant motivated by hate.